Now, so just while we're getting set up, guys, does anybody have a question? Please put up your hand. So we have just gentleman just down here. We should be able to find a microphone for you. Yeah, thank you. Excuse me.
Oh, yeah, just in relation to the seed bombs, unless it's a classified secret, what's the medium that the seeds are in, that little ball, if you don't mind?
Yeah, it's very simple. If people wanted to make it, I brought the stuff so you can make it. So what you do is you get this clay. So it's potter's clay. It's called grog clay. So it has tiny little pieces in it. You hold it in your hand. You make a little ball. Put your finger into the ball, and then, like a potter, you make a tiny little cup. And then into that cup, you put a small amount of compost. And then you pick the sunflower seeds, or we had sunflower and wildflower seeds. You pick them, 2 or 3 of them, sprinkle it in, and then gently close the cup. Roll it in your hand, then you have a ball.
Thank you.
So at the end, if you want to know how to do it, you can hang around the back and I'll show you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Next question. Anybody got a question, please? We have a lady just up here at the front.
Hi, I'm a great forager. It's a question for Jeremy. You had ramsons, wild garlic, and all around here I see the hedgerows are full of three-cornered leek. Have you got any sort of anything to say about the difference between three-cornered leek and wild garlic, the ramson?
It's very interesting. They're so closely related, and I think where the leek has a slightly more interesting structure than wild, because the wild garlic the ramson is just a big leaf, and you have this very delicate stalk. But like I was saying, with the stalks of the lovage and the thing, you can slice three-cornered garlic very, 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 very thinly and use it as the basing of a slaw. And it's a great way of using this extraordinary bounty from foraged goods, because you take the leaf for one thing and the stalk for another. And you can blanch it. You can use it with abundance. If anything, it's slightly milder than the wild garlic, and can be used in abundance. And it's terrific in potato soups or gratins. I mean, and once you get familiar in that style of cooking, then the world's your oyster. You can go wild with it. But it pickles very well too, which is rather nice.
Say that generally speaking, the three-cornered leek grows on the sunny side of the roads. Yeah, and the ransoms generally prefers a shady spot. And if anybody's interested in having wild garlic in their own garden, either the three-cornered leek for a sunny spot or the ramsons for a shady spot, you just dig a little bit up in the wild, put it into a corner of your garden where it doesn't mind if it spreads, and in a couple of years' time you'll have, if you want the smell and the taste of garlic in your garden, it'll be there forevermore. It's a brilliant thing. We use the three-cornered leek in pretty much the same way as we use the ramsons. Yeah.
That's very well.
Yeah, it's just all over the place. And the season actually this year has gone on since December, really. And we're sorry for interrupting that.
No, not at all. No, it is extraordinary. Once upon 20 years ago, you could never find. It was this mythical leaf, and now it seems to be abundant, which is great. Hopefully one of the few benefits of global warming, I think.
Okay, our next question, please. They're all very shy this morning. Probably the one thing that really is very evident from this morning is we've 3 very different speakers, 3 very different people from very different fields and stuff, but food really connects us. It doesn't matter what area you're working in, whether it's academia, whether it's a practitioner, whatever. The one thing that we really have in common that it just really connects us. So, it's probably good to constantly look at that as well. And sometimes you might think that maybe that's your field, but I think from looking at just our 3 speakers and in general of what's happening here at Ballymaloe at the Lit Fest and stuff, just the similarities that everybody brings to the table. So yeah, if we can just 1 or 2 more questions before we go for coffee. With gentlemen down here in the front.
Hi, just like to say this morning's session was fabulous, really, and all of the speakers made a fabulous contribution. But just to kind of bring this back to the issue of agriculture being the bad boy of global warming, and I think what I've heard today really tells me, and I work in industry and not in the food industry specifically, I work largely in pharma and chemicals and that area, and our industry is very heavily regulated, effectively. I mean, we are regulated in terms of carbon emissions and energy saving and all of this stuff, and that's all very good. And I think Ireland particularly has kind of soft-pedaled the agricultural side of this, and the industrial side gets a lot of attention. But in some senses, I think what we've heard today is that the real issue is around food waste in particular, and why produce all this food if it's not going to be physically used. So I think in a way the solution to a lot of the greenhouse gas problems is in actually reducing the amount of food that is actually produced, or more importantly reducing the amount of food that's wasted, because this food is still needed. People still need this food. And I guess where I'm coming from is it was an eye-opener for me today to realise the actual sheer amounts of food that never gets to people to eat. I mean, 40% I think was the number you mentioned. I mean, that has to be a huge solution to this problem if we can get it sorted out. And in a way, I think the food industry needs to push the thing back and say, look, guys, we're making this stuff, but you guys are wasting it. So I think if the waste problem can be solved, that surely has to go to benefit all of us as a society. So I think what we heard today was, for me, certainly an eye-opener, because I looked just at the industrial side of this. I never really thought very much about agriculture, and, you know, in terms of these numbers, it's kind of scary, really. And some of the solutions are actually quite simple. They're actually quite simple. Getting your app organised, amazingly simple. But once you have it done, I mean, it just will grow. So I think you've done a huge service to the Litfest, and indeed, if more people are listening to Ireland today. So well done.
Thank you very much.
So it wasn't in the form of a question, it was more a commentary and to try bring some other
brilliant
perspective to it.
And I do think that deserves a round of applause. That really is the message this morning. So, Danielle, just a very quick question to you. As regards your message, do you think it's feeding across to chefs and the industry? Do you think that they're looking now at trying to reduce food waste? Maybe not just because they know they save money, but they think that they're actually listening to a message from you yourself?
I mean, I think chefs have especially been at the forefront of this issue, especially in the United States. You have, celebrity chefs like Tom Colicchio, who is on Bravo, which is, one of our food networks. We have Dan Barber of Blue Hill, who's been a leader in really highlighting the issue of food waste and using not just, cuts of meat that would have otherwise been thrown away, but the ribs of things like kale and showing eaters that these things can be delicious and be part of a really sustainable diet. I think, if you had asked me 5 years ago if food waste was something that people cared about, whether they were chefs or policymakers or businesses, they would have shrugged their shoulders and said, there's nothing we can do about that. And what has changed is that everyone, from regular eaters like all of us to global leaders like Ban Ki-moon, who's the UN Secretary General, have realized that food waste is a tremendous issue. It's a tremendous problem, but it also presents enormous opportunities. I think consumers often get blamed for this issue. Oh, we waste so much food in our homes, and I talked a little bit about that. But the industry is wasting tremendous amounts of food. Retailers and grocery stores and manufacturers have wasted food because they didn't value it. It's very cheap for most of the world. And being able to, put a higher value on food wherever you are in the food chain is, I think, really important for recognizing and then solving this issue.
And then, Jeremy, do you find in your own restaurants that you and maybe you're driven to tell the chefs, or they're starting to figure that out themselves, that's the message, that we need to reduce food, or maybe we need to work with different cuts or different...
Oh, yes, I think that. Well, I was very lucky. I was brought up with it. Being an East Coast Scots Presbyterian, thou shalt not waste. Was sort of drummed into you from an early age. And it's a skill and a required skill of a chef in a restaurant not to waste. Holus bolus, throwing out of foods at the end of the night. So we use everything. and we try to buy as many whole carcasses as possible, so we use everything. It's more efficient, and it's more cost effective, and it's more interesting. You generate an interest in the young cooks, you train them and you educate them in that, and so it's a pleasure. But where, interestingly, I think there is one aspect of this is, and it's catch-22, and I don't know where this one's going to go yet, are customers who want to be dazzled by your skills and choice, but want to be assured that you are a reasonably good housekeeper and do the right thing. And where you have choice, you have waste, I think, quite simply. And when you have an excess of choice, what do you want, madam? Chicken or fish for you? At every wedding, just can't you have one thing? And I think this is a big thing, a massive issue. It seems very simple on the subject, on the surface, but beneath it is huge. Because restaurants do want to please people, and they do want to. That's our job. That's what we aim to do. But it can generate spectacular waste. But we're very fortunate to be in a position where we can say and do things, and are more and more in that position to do so, and echo this sentiment very much indeed.
Okay, thank you. Have we got another question from the audience, please? Now they're all going. You've got them going. So we have a lady up here, and then we'll move to just down to the back.
Yeah, hi. Thanks very much. That was really, really interesting today. Just to say there, thanks very much, especially on the food, the cloud and the beer. I think it's really, really interesting. And I'm just wondering, have you exhausted the likes, say, of Aldi and Lidl and those, or, is it up? Are you looking for people to go to these chains to try get? I live in Lucan, not too far from Tala myself, in Dublin, and there's definitely lots of stuff there. I just think it's a marvelous, absolutely marvelous idea. So I really, would be very interested in it. Just food is such a basic thing that we're all entitled to have. Yeah. Basic thing, a roof over our head and a bit of food in our belly.
Thank you.
Yeah. But just that question, that is what I want to ask. The likes of Aldi, Lidl, the supermarkets now that are getting big in our country, that are big, that I do all my shopping in, have you approached the likes of them to kind of come on board?
So that's a good question. Good question. I have the answer. Bad question. Don't know the answer. But Aldi has been very, very good. It's actually been amazing. So nearly every Aldi store in the country has come on board, and they're part of the process. So 10:30 in the morning, every morning, all over the country, food is collected from all the Aldis. Tesco, 7:30 in the evening, every Tesco store in the country, that gets collected too. In actual fact, Tesco, they get a lot of bad press, but they have been amazing in this process. And their plan, working with us and Fair Share in the UK, is to move food from every of their 3,700 stores in the country, in the UK, by the end of next year. And we estimate, just on the back of a sheet, that's 60 million meals that you're moving. And what's really amazing is it's small quantities. When you're talking about a restaurant or something like that, normally it's small amounts, but if you add all of those small amounts together, then you have this huge amount. And if you're hungry, you only need a small amount. If you're looking at the calculations there on what a meal is, it's 400 grams. So 400 grams of food, that's a meal for a person. So when you're talking 1 million tons of food in Ireland, nobody needs to go hungry. But the really interesting fact, I suppose, from the food statistics is that less than 1% of the food is at retail level. So if you look, there was a piece of research done by Stop Food Waste in the UK. And the retailers themselves, the ones that are just selling the food, they're very, very conscious, because they know people are in their stores looking at what they're doing and seeing them throwing something out. So they're really conscious and aware of not to do that. But in the distribution centre at the back, or in the back of a kitchen, and I've been in loads of kitchens, and it's just, you would be shocked what is thrown out. I've seen, as part of feeding the 5,000, we worked with Tristram Stewart. We fed 5,000 people on the street in Dublin. And I made 2 phone calls to get 1.25 tons of food. 1.25 tons of food, and it was wonky vegetables. So we had wonky carrots, we had wonky potatoes, we had wonky everything, but it made a beautiful curry. So it's this whole, there's this thing about choice, but there's also this thing about aesthetics, and so it's not just simple. There's a whole load of complicated things. But the retailers, definitely, where we're having a challenge is actually with industry, with the industrial producers who are throwing out tons and tons, and they're not really engaging. And I suppose there was a picture there of the Minister for Food, our last Minister for Food at the depot in Cork, and he came along and he said really, really nice things, but we're building an infrastructure that costs us 1.1 million to do this in a year, and they're not stumping up anything.
Now, sorry, probably time for one more question.
Hi, just a very quick question for Danny, whose talk I found very interesting. This is a question about Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and I think with our current government in Ireland, I don't think we can cast any aspersions about other governments just in terms of climate change, because so little is happening here about it. But what impact do you think it'll have? Obama has been reasonably good on the issue, and will there be much difference between Trump and Clinton in their approach to climate change? I read yesterday that Chomsky said that Trump may bring the death knell to the human species because his attitude to climate change is so shocking. But just, which one would you prefer, basically?
Oh, that's a easy question to answer. I mean, in terms of who is thinking more about environmental issues, it's definitely, and thinking of them in a way that is focused on sustainability, I think Hillary Clinton. I mean, Trump has come out saying he, is basically a climate change denier. So I feel, the choice is clear there if that's the issue that you vote on. What's disappointed me about all of the presidential candidates and our political system in the United States in general is that, even though this is an issue, food and sustainability are issues that American voters, have proven that they care about, none of our candidates have really focused on it. And it's been hard to even get someone like Bernie Sanders, who, is an advocate for organic farming in his home state of Vermont, to really come out strongly on the food system. So again, it's really a matter of where, we need to not just vote with our fork, but vote with our vote and make sure that we're voting for candidates who share the same values around the food system that many of us in this room and people who are attending this conference do.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm afraid we've run out of time. We could probably sit here for hours. You didn't think Sunday morning that you could sit for hours talking about climate change and bad things that we can do and stuff, but it just proves that we can. We're going to break slightly now to get some coffee and some fresh air, and we would like everybody to be back just before 12 o'clock. So thank you again to Danielle, to Jeremy and Eoin, which were fascinating this morning. Thank you.